Finally, MLS have announced the new playoff format for this upcoming season, and despite the fact that I know there's been some rumors and some leaks for the past couple of days, and even going back to the past couple of weeks of how the playoff format is going to look for this upcoming season, we knew nothing was going to be official until the league announced it, and they officially announced it this morning of how this new playoff format is going to look. Now, there's been some mixed reaction in terms of this new playoff format, especially more toward the negative side, because many people think that the one that we currently have before we changed to this new one was perfect. The league has really hit the sweet spot of the old playoff format, and the way that they changed it from the one that we had for the past couple of seasons just completely ruins it. And I will give my personal opinion in terms of looking at this new playoff format, but before I do that, let me talk about how exactly this new playoff format is going to look. So first of all, seems like the playoffs is going to be expanded again with this new playoff format. Instead of 14 teams in the playoffs, we're now going to have 18 teams, with 9 of them from each of the conference. And once again, more than half of the team in MLS will make it to the playoffs. And, this has been kind of the thing for the past couple of, or not just for the past couple of seasons, because I think the last 2 years it's been kind of like around 50%. But really, throughout the league history, we have seen the fact that more than 50% of the team have been able to make it to the playoffs. And this time it seems like it's going to be the case again. I think about 61% of the team will make it to the playoffs for this upcoming season. Now, there will be a wild card round, or as I like to call it, a play-in round between the 8th and 9th seed. So this is very similar to what we saw in the COVID-shortened year during the time when the Eastern Conference did had an NBA-style kind of play-in round where the 7th seed hosted the 10th seed and then the 8th seed hosted the 9th seed. Well, in here, we only will have like one kind of play-in round with the 8th seed hosting in the 9th seed, and it's not just going to be in the Eastern Conference, but it will also be in the Western Conference. Now, in round 1, this is where MLS decided to bring some nostalgia back in the playoff format. So remember during the early days of MLS, and remember when I made videos talking about how in the early days of MLS and how playoffs is being used, they decided to kind of Americanize a little bit, decided to go with a best of 3 series instead of going with a 2-legged affair or a single elimination. Well, it seems like they're bringing it back. They're bringing back the best of 3 series with the higher seed hosting the first game, the lower seed hosting the second. And if both of these teams were able to win either the first or second game, then we have a decisive third game with the higher seed that will be hosting that one. And what's also interesting about the best of 3 series and also the wild card round is that neither of them will feature extra time, and that if the game does remain tied after 90 minutes, we just go straight to a PK shootout. Now, in round 2 and the conference final, and alongside with MLS Cup, will be single elimination, just like what we have seen for the past couple of seasons, and will have extra time and have PK shootout if it goes to that point. And then when we look at the playoff schedule, it seems like December MLS Cup time frame is back on the menu. So, for the past couple of years, it's been kind of almost alternate where MLS Cup sometimes can be happening in November, sometimes it can happening in December, and it feels like this year it's going to happen in December again, with the play-in wildcard round happening between October 25th to October 26th. The best of 3 series, which will definitely take the longest to complete, between the 28th all the way to November 12th. Then we got round 2, the conference semifinal and the conference final, happening between November 25th to the December 3rd. It's important to remind you that during that time frame between November 12th and November 25th is the November international break, so that's why there's kind of a gap between both of those times when the playoff resume. And then, of course, we do have MLS Cup happening in December 9th, similar to what we saw in 2021 when it was December, and I think that was the same case, I believe, in 2019, or not 2019, I'm sorry, but in 2020 in the COVID-shortened year, where MLS Cup was also happening in December. Now, in terms of my personal opinions about this new playoff format, I do have to agree with the majority of people thinking that, yeah, this does not look like it's a good playoff format, and that it feels like it has ruined it compared to the previous format. I mean, the good thing about the previous format is the fact that, one, it's a single elimination, which means that, every game means a lot, but also, to make the regular season still matters, you still will have the team that gets the number one seed gets a bye. Whereas here, it kind of doesn't really matter in the end to get the top seed, because one thing that I haven't mentioned in this new playoff format is that there's no team that is going to get a bye. Well, at least if you don't count the play-in round, if you just go straight into the first round, everybody will be actually entering in the first round, like previous season. And then I'll get to talk about, just one of the things that I dislike, and this is kind of something that a lot of people have said too. There's too many teams that can make it to the playoffs. And, for a long time, people hated the fact that more than half of the league make it to the playoffs. And I do kind of agree, because, again, it just takes away of how the regular season is. And that if you want to make it to the playoffs, you really need to earn it. And here, once again, it just feels like, you still need to, of course, earn it to make it to the playoffs. But you don't have to really kind of work so hard to a point where you really need to work hard and potentially lock into like the top 4 or the top 5, and that, again, it just feels like, once again, that's one of the biggest issue of why there's so many teams in the playoffs. And not to mention, with the way that you also have sometimes in terms of this first round matchup where there might be the top seed facing against a weaker team, and that's usually kind of is one-sided. I mean, you're hoping that there could be an upset in that, but believe me, most of the time, especially from what we saw last season, there usually never is like an upset. Usually the top seed or the higher seed just throttle teams that are just mediocre or kind of are on the lower seed heading into the playoffs. And then we get to some of the things that I dislike with the way that, the best of 3 series returning. I will say that I don't hate it as much as maybe some people do. I mean, I think one of the reasons why they got rid of the best of 3 series is that, they don't want to make MLS being too Americanized, and there are some traditionalists that hate the fact that MLS was being too Americanized during the early days of the league. And I will say that, one thing I don't like the fact that they bring back the best of 3 series is just the fact that now it seems like we maybe might not see as much upsets as we've seen. Like, one of the good thing I like about the first round is the fact that I want to see some upset. I want to see, the higher seed kind of maybe have just a bad game, and the lower seed can take advantage, and they move on into the next round. Well, here it's kind of hard to do, and in some way this is kind of a way to kind of protect the higher seed a bit, where if you just have one bad game, it's okay. You still have another game to fix that, albeit you're probably going to have to, well, not probably, but you have to win that next game on the road and hope you win the decisive game. So, yeah, it definitely does decrease the chance, the fact that we might see some major upset that could happen. Though, there could also be a chance that it could be the opposite too, where maybe the lower seeds somehow were able to win two of the game. Like, I think also with the way how the hosting kind of works. And by the way, another thing I don't like about the best of 3 series is that this basically means it guarantees every team except for the 9th seed, you're going to at least have a home game in the playoffs. And that also devalue of the importance of the regular season, because we know home field advantage is huge in MLS, especially last season, where it really was taken to an extreme where basically almost no road team was able to win on the road last season. So with that being added, with every team kind of guarantees the home seed, it just feels like it defeats the purpose of the regular season, where it's almost like it doesn't really matter where you finish in terms of the seeding. You're going to guarantee yourself a home game, and that seems kind of more important compared to maybe get a higher seed or so forth. I mean, you can maybe get two more or one more home games or so forth, but I think because of the fact that with this new format, teams guarantee at least a home game, that decreased the value of teams maybe fighting harder during the regular season. And then again, the other thing that is also so kind of idea that I don't like is just, again, going back to the schedule itself, with the way that, again, between the 12th and the 25th there's going to be no MLS action. Though I will say that for a very long time this has always been a problem that MLS has had with the November international break, and that in some way there's just nothing that they can do about it. But it also doesn't kind of stop from me by saying that, there's definitely, it's kind of an annoyance, the fact that for about 2 weeks there's no MLS action. I mean, the only thing I will say that, at least with the way that the November international break will once again get in the way of the playoffs this season, is that we won't have a situation where maybe there's going to be one team, or the team that has the bye basically will not play for like 3 weeks or so. I mean, that's still a thing that I'm pretty sure Revolution fans are still angry about, what happened in 2021 when they had like 27 days without a game between the last game of the regular season and the first game of the playoffs, and Russ was a huge factor to a point where, they weren't able to move on into the next round. Whereas in this case, at least every team is going to have that same situation where they're gonna have to, unfortunately, deal with the annoyance of the November international break before really get themselves back into the competitiveness. Now, I will also say that, when you look at this playoff format, I can also understand that there are some things that, the league decided to put there is it's just the league trying to create a very entertaining playoff kind of race. I mean, I think when I also look at this format, it is pretty clear that this format is created mainly because the league and Apple TV really want to have that extra revenue, and also that ratings too. I mean, I think, as much as people hated the fact that the best of 3 series is taking place during round 1, where maybe that's the round where there's a lot of meaningless game, that's also the round that will feature the most playoff game out of any rounds that we will see. So, if you had more playoff game, then you're going to have more revenue and more people watching, which is what Apple TV would like. And not to mention, this is also a positive in terms of the teams itself, where, they can have some extra revenue of hosting a playoff home game. So, obviously, when you look at revenue and also rating stuff, it makes perfect sense of why they decide to do that. And I know there's also some people who say, well, why is it so odd when they have it in round 1 and not have it in round 2, or even all the way to the conference final until we get to MLS Cup? The reason why I don't think that's going to happen is because that just takes way too long, to a point where, I know the league wants to end their season like no later than the second week of December. Like, if you have like maybe best of 3 even in round 2 or the conference final, the season might not even be finished before Christmas. And then there's the factor of the weather being colder and colder as we get into December, to a point where you definitely do not want to see an MLS Cup being hosted in a city that is frigid cold. I mean, to be fair, we has had that problem before with MLS Cup hosting in December, is especially in cold weather kind of city in December, and that I'm pretty sure the league tried to mitigate that by moving it into November. But again, it just feels like that doesn't seem like it's going to be working for this time, and that they also like to the fact that they want to keep the big game back in December, as it's kind of been the traditional date since MLS Cup started to kind of be taking place in December. I can think all the way going back to like 2011, 2012, and even 2013. And again, some people will also say, well, why don't they just get rid of the best of 3 series and just have every round being single elimination, just like what we seen last season? Well, no, because again, going back to the revenue, Apple TV want that revenue, they want that rating, they want to have a chance to broadcast more games because of the deal that they pay MLS to do so. So this is a perfect way to, of course, do so, even if that means that maybe there could be chances in terms of these best of 3 series, and some of them are just being so lopsided that it's kind of hurting the ratings rather than maybe improving, and it's just simply because of revenue. I think the revenue part is where Apple TV really wants to hit now. I mean, the rating part is definitely good because they want people to keep watching it, but it's definitely the revenue that is a huge hitting point. I mean, why do you think other leagues like the NFL and the NBA has started to add in more teams and kind of add in a play-in round like what we see in NBA, it's all about that money. It's all about that revenue that they want to generate in terms of the playoffs being happening. But again, overall, when you look at it, again, I know the league have said that this is kind of like an experiment, and we're going to see whether if it's going to work out or not, because I know as the way that we see this league continue to expand to a point where we know we're going to have a 30th team that's going to come into the league this season, and we could get to a point where if we push to 31 or 32 teams or maybe beyond, then the playoffs could once again be expanded again, or it could be a point where we could see what was one of the ideas about the playoff format being a World Cup kind of knockout stage playoff format, or no, not the World Cup knockout stage, but just kind of a World Cup style kind of tournament where I know that I think I made a video talking about that before. In fact, I made a video before talking about how can MLS improve their playoff format and certain ideas for them to create a perfect playoff format for fans and teams to like. But again, it's going to be interesting. It is going to be very interesting to see whether this, of course, would work out or not. But let me know in the comments below. What do you think of this new playoff format? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think MLS may need to change things as we get into the next couple of seasons? I mean, I have a feeling the league is probably going to look at this and see how it goes. If it turns out to be good and maybe kind of grow on people, then they'll stick it. But if it just ends up to be an absolute disaster and turns out to be too much of a gimmick, then I think the league might think about changing it again. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. What do you think of this new playoff format that the league have announced? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.